liver's swollen. I love that early in the morning. The temperature change coming up, the mist is rising off the water. It's driving me crazy. Just when I pulled down here, I saw a fish rise on the far side. It's driving me crazy. I'm not fishing, but I can't start, because if I start fishing, I'm not going to stop. I got things I got to get done. I still got another month of hunting to get done here in a couple weeks as well, up north. But anyway, for all of you who are new here, just a quick reminder, if you are a member of or support offended culture, if you got it in you to be offended, this isn't the right place for you, alright? You got a fair warning. You're welcome, the door's wide open, but if you have it in you to get offended, we're not going to cater to your emotions, alright? We're not going to cater to your emotional challenges, alright? This isn't the place for you. Offended culture is not safe here. The members, they're not. Those are your own issues. You got to work them out. Hopefully you can. Another thing too is I've had a handful of people, friends of mine, saying that they're hearing through the grapevine, various groups, blah blah blah, that I'm being referred to as the tough guy. I find that kind of funny because I'm not a tough guy. I'm actually probably one of the handful of few people remaining that don't give a shit what anyone thinks and will stand up to defend myself and fight. Unfortunately, there seems to be an overabundance of little kittens out there who have had that conditioned out of them. And it's a sad thing to witness and watch. I'm not a tough guy. I have it in me to stand up for myself. And I seriously do not give a shit what anyone thinks, alright? And it's funny when I say that, you'll probably see a trigger in the comment section, how many people that triggers. It's so funny to watch in the earlier days. It's interesting for me just to watch people. I find people more interesting almost in this topic at times, just watching people, how they react. As I observe mainstream, and I see as well how easily the herd is manipulated and controlled and directed. I find that quite amazing. It's almost like there is a recipe to herd and manipulate human beings, just like there's a recipe to train a dog or a horse. And I have a feeling that the select few that are allowed to have that recipe are obviously the owners of social media, without a doubt. Anyways, before I get going on my little morning tangent, I've only had 2 coffees and I'm ready to rip. I'm a little late, didn't get a video done yesterday. But anyway, it is quite amusing to me how I don't give a shit what you think. Saying that to camera will trigger so many people into feeling threatened and just disgusted and offended. Of all the shit going on in the world today, it's amazing how simple of little items can be used to trigger various, and sadly many, human beings. I don't give a shit what you think. Trigger away, be offended, get out of here. You're welcome here. The door's wide open. If you're a member of offended culture is not supported here in any way, and you're in danger. Your emotions are in danger here, extreme danger. Alright, I got an important one I want to share. This is very important. Well, let's let the email roll and you'll see why. Alright, this is a police officer, ex-police officer, who wrote in a handful of months ago. Mark, remember you, remember every word. I appreciate your emailing back, and here we go. It's important for the people to hear, especially the people that are sitting on the sidelines and watching and listening. My name is Mark Wallace, and I live in England. I'm a 50-year-old ex-UK police officer, and I wrote you several months back when I was lucky enough to have you read my encounter story I had back in 2011 in Pennsylvania while visiting my buddy there. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you for retelling my encounter to the public who watch your channel. I myself still watch it regularly, and I'm also very curious and annoyed that the governments, especially the US and Canadian, are still cover this topic up and deny any existence of these beings. Surely, on just the safety aspect alone, it would be only right to fully inform and educate the public on the matter, as every day in America and Canada, men, women, and children are setting off into the areas on hikes, walks, and hunting trips where these beings dwell. It's not fair and simply shocking. There's places and areas where you get warnings of maybe coming into contact with bears via verbal warnings and on signs. Also places in the southern states where you get similar warnings of alligators in the area and not to swim in certain places. So why the hell don't we get the same warnings of these big hairy bastards? When I had my encounter, and what I witnessed terrified me to the core, and to this day, 10 years on, I still can't process what I saw that day. There is no mistaking what it was. As I described in my previous email, it was over 8 feet tall, very bulky. It was the shape of a huge man, and it moved like a man, as I also previously described, as it paced back and forth upright just as a man would. But the thing that separated it from being a man, apart from his size, was the noise it made when it roared at me. I won't forget that noise till the day I die. No human on this planet could make that sound. It haunts me to this day. No shit, Mark. It is amazing, and that's why, you know, just for that fact alone, what you just said, that's why, I mean, I haven't really said it too much lately, but in the earlier times, like I said, I'd be sitting on the fence watching this absolute shit show circus go around in circles on mainstream television or mainstream media, YouTube, whatever, as the small group handful of lunatics, passionate lunatics though, they're passionate about the topic, but there's no doubt they're freaking lunatics, kept this and have kept this topic going in an endless circle of going nowhere. For how many years now? They've enabled this topic to become a laughed out joke. The people who want this topic suppressed and not acknowledged publicly are probably just stroking them in the background and giggling and patting them on their little bum saying, good work, you've done a great work, this topic is so easily suppressed now, excellent, we don't have to do anything, you've done it all perfectly, right? And for the people who have not succumbed to getting caught up in that whirlwind, that drain with the rest of those people of keeping this topic going in circles and going nowhere, for those people, their minds, guaranteed, like mine, have gone, okay, I've seen one of the damn things, why are we being lied to? Why? And then you dig to try to find out why we're being lied to, and then a million doors open up, and then you start learning more facts, more alarming facts, facts that are in our faces daily, that we are being lied to, manipulated, and controlled. Why? I mean, it's funny. You know, I said that earlier about politicians, people who have that genetic fuck up in their makeup that makes them need power. They need power at all costs. It gets past a dollar sign. It's not a number anymore. It's just the power. You know, you see so many people in power. It's easy to take the American political system as an example. You see somebody like the Clintons who have killed people to get power. They're in their 70s now or something. They have grandchildren. They can basically have a home anywhere in the world, set foot on any beach on the planet, but still at that age they have that fierce drive to have power at all costs. It's like, what the hell? What's going on? What's going on? Why? I want to know why, right? It leads to, this is a whole bunch of shit going on that is very confusing, and I want to know why. And this topic is one of the easiest, I feel, to deliver to the world that we're being lied to. How can you take who knows how many people now, right? You got to admit, I mean, what is there, almost 225,000 subscribers on my channel alone, and I'm just a regular human being like the rest of you out there. And the only reason you're subscribed to this channel is because you're curious to know what the F is going on. You're curious to this topic, you want to hear, you want to gain knowledge, you're tired of hearing from people who want to control what you hear, and you want to learn. But how many of those people have seen these things, have come forward? How many? I haven't a clue. I would never even I could never even guess. I can't even throw out a funny guess at how many people have had these experiences. And what an amazing effort. It's almost like, wow, well done to you power-monging sons of bitches out there who have managed to keep this topic suppressed so well. It's almost like you want to say, wow, well done. That is a hell of a thing to pull off with this many people seeing this shit firsthand. It's amazing to me. What a job. What a crazy, well done job for getting something done that you want done, right? Can you imagine? Imagine what it would take to be able to suppress tens of thousands of human beings who have seen these things and manage to manipulate the majority of them to be too ashamed or scared to talk about this openly. You imagine that skill? If you had that skill to manipulate that many innocent, hardworking, good, honest people, imagine what you could do with that power on this planet. But it's pretty obvious what they are doing with that power on this planet today, right? Now that is, if you can see clearly and think for yourself. Anyways, there's my coffee-fueled rant for the morning and my interruption of Mark's email. Too much time to think sometimes, and I work by myself all day. Anyway, here we go. Let's get on with this. This is very important. Anyway, moving on to why I contacted you again. I don't know if you recall my email, but I explained that my buddy and I lost contact as he wouldn't return my calls, texts, or emails for at least 5 years, as he didn't like me bringing up the topic of what went down on his property that day and just got tired of me bringing it up. We butted heads over it from the day it happened, as while I was still laying at his home on vacation, still staying at his home on vacation, and had 1 week left of my stay after the day it happened, he made me promise to keep it secret from everyone, including his wife, which I just didn't agree with, and pointed out to him that the thing could come back prowling around the property, and if it wanted to, it could kill anyone in its path with ease. We actually had a physical fight over this, as I felt very strongly about feeling the need for people to know what I'd seen, and he just wouldn't have it, and basically threatened me that if I told his wife, he'd fuck me up. As we're both ex-boxers, we went at it and made quite a mess of each other. I didn't add this detail on my previous email, but I feel it's relevant to add it now, as this new email is about my buddy getting back in touch with me and apologizing about everything. As he'd been such a close friend for years previous to us falling out and fighting, I reached out one more time to see if I could get through to him. I don't know if you recall reading out my story, Steve, but you were very upset and sympathetic, and at the same time annoyed that my encounter had caused a lifelong friendship to end. And you actually looked into your camera and told me to reach out to my buddy and tell him to watch your show and realize how many encounters/sightings is happening every day. Well, I did just that, and around a week later, he emailed me asking for my phone number so we could talk, as he'd actually been trying to ring me since getting my last email, but unknown to him, I'd changed my number some 2 to 3 years back and never thought to contact him with my new number. He rang and we chatted for well over an hour, and we both felt we had huge weights lifted from us both. He explained that he'd watched your channel after I advised him to, and watched the actual link of you reading on my email. He said he felt enormous guilt, and he knew he had to contact me and talk this through. My buddy actually told me he'd also seen the Sasquatch a few months before I arrived for my vacation that autumn, but he said he'd simply seen it quietly walking through woodland on the other side of a small lake that's adjacent to his land. He said it freaked him out and prompted him to ask a few locals if they'd seen or heard anything in the area. None of them did, apart from an old guy he'd seen from time to time at the same fishing hole did have something to say on the matter. He simply said, "Leave them alone and they'll leave you be. But whatever you do, don't go looking for them." That's all I want to say about it. My buddy thanked the old guy and never mentioned it to another soul. To this day, I'm disappointed he didn't tell me, as we've always discussed everything as good friends do. He did say that the fact he'd recently got his new job, the local police department, he thought it was better to keep it to himself. Anyway, Steve, I thought it was only right to contact you to let you know the outcome of this whole saga. I'd especially like to thank you for reaching out after reading my encounter earlier this year for my buddy to watch your channel and realize it's happening to other people and not just him and I. Steve, you played a huge part in getting my friendship back on track with my buddy, so I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. This is a perfect example of how your channel and your kind, wise words help normal, everyday folk like myself. Please don't stop doing what you're doing and take care. P.S. My buddy eventually told his wife about what he'd seen and my encounter, causing a huge argument and actually causing them to break up for a short while. Luckily, they're back together now, but have, in fact, sold that home and moved closer to the city for obvious safety reasons, as they have a young family. Best wishes, Mark Wilson Wallace. Mark, absolutely stoked that you emailed me back, and I found it right away here. You emailed this recently, and that's a very, very, very important email to share with the whole world right here today, because that's what we're doing, right? And I'll guarantee you your email probably just struck a chord in who knows how many people and gave them a little twang of guilt jammed in their backside for doing the same thing in their past with family or friends when it comes to this topic. Guaranteed. The fact that so many people climb up and shut up and don't want to tell anybody. Or the fact, you know, how many times have we heard people with friends or family, cousins, whatever, have seen these things together and they lose track of each other immediately after and they never talk to each other ever again. How fucked up is that? That is so wrong in so many levels, right? I still don't understand it myself. I don't put too much energy into it, but when it comes up like it is today, it just makes me shake my head. It's like, what the hell's going on, people? What's going on? You're that weak? We're supposed to... You want to go through life being the best backup you can for your family and friends. The best backup you can, right? You want to be the one that people depend on. That's what everybody should strive for. You want to be that person that everybody goes to for help, goes to for advice, goes to for backup, right? You don't want to be that person that deserts, right? You don't want to be that coward that runs and hides, doesn't speak. You don't want to be scared of shit, right? I don't know. I hope this email knee-jerks many people who have done the exact same thing as you and your buddy. I hope this email knee-jerks every single person who's done the same thing to break free of that little prison they're in their mind and cut loose and fix this shit and stand up, square up their shoulders, look people in the eye, and just speak honestly and speak out loud. There's nothing better for the soul food than doing that. Anyway. I'll probably notice my energy level's a little higher. That's because I'm doing this first thing in the morning instead of at the end of the day when I'm cross-eyed tired. One other mention I want to make too. Recently had somebody someone email me. It took me a while to give them my mailing address. They're going to email me a book they put together on this topic. It's a person from Alaska. I can't remember if he's a biologist or not. I think possibly. And we'll tap on that topic and that person later on once I get what he wants me to share with all of you once he gets it to me. But in the meantime, he did make a mention that he knew of a First Nations person near the small town of Lillooet, British Columbia, and that's where I am absolutely familiar with Lillooet. I know many people in that town. I live just up over the mountains from it. Traveled through there a gazillion times, hunted around there, trapped wolves around there. I know numerous people who have had numerous experiences with these beings around there. And he mentioned to me, asked me if I had heard of an incident where a First Nations person hit one of these things with a vehicle and killed it near Lillooet. And the rest of the short mention went that the RCMP and another vehicle came to the scene, grabbed the thing, and left with it. End of story. Now, from what I gather so far, this person seems to be quite credible to me, and if he was willing to share that tidbit with me, there must be a lot of weight to it. So what I'm saying is, all my friends out there in Lillooet or Pemberton, Cache Creek, Williams Lake, Kamloops, wherever, if you have any knowledge of that experience, that episode, see if you could possibly email us about it and share some tidbits with us. It'd be interesting to know what happened. And if we could really pull a wild card, maybe if the RCMP officers that were involved in that incident, maybe you could send us an email. Wouldn't that be good? One more other mention I want to make. Had somebody forward me something. In fact, the other day, small little note that took me back a little, made me sort of go, huh? Yosemite National Park. Yosemite National Park. Dave Plattis will know exactly how many people have gone missing around there. I know it's a staggering number of people have gone missing in that national park as well. Others, if you Google up Yosemite and see the translation to that, do it now. It's a little alarming. If you can't do it, just for the curious, the word Yosemite directly translates to those who kill. How's that for a wow? Absolutely numerous people have gone missing in the national park, Yosemite National Park, and it turns out the name of that park originally translates to those who kill. Wouldn't that be interesting for one of our sleuths to dig into that one and find out why? Who named it and why? Right? A little alarming. Creepy shit. Now, while I'm here, I gotta get going, get some work done, but let's get some. I gotta go down to the bottom of my list and find people I've missed. What do we got? Alright, getting on with it. What do we got here, Mark's Red? An odd night. Hi Steve, here's a story for you. One of 3 that I can't explain. It's 2010. I was employed as a seasonal wilderness ranger. My primary responsibility was to enforce U.S. wilderness standards and to reestablish a wilderness trail route that had been mostly lost due to long-term lack of maintenance. I was assigned to was dominated by dense chaparral, much of which had burned some years prior, and the new region was thick, thorny, and dotted with fire-hardened bones of the previous cohort, mostly impassable. Truly nasty stuff. The drive time was long, and the hike in got longer and longer as the trail work progressed. I eventually opted for an 8-day on, 6-day off schedule. I would spike up for the duration of my on time. I was young, healthy, alone, unarmed, with the exception of a Bendix King radio, and I loved it. I had a cache established near the top of the mountain with tools and water. The first day of 8 would consist of showing up for work, taking care of administrative tasks, then driving out to the work site and hiking in. On this occasion, I made it to the cache a little early and was doing some trail grading with a hand tool, digging in the dirt. Hadn't made it far when I hit a ground nest. Oh, and was stung multiple times in the hands and neck and face. It hurt. I'm not allergic, but I received so many stings and my face started to swell and my eyes were mostly swollen shut. Oh, that sucks. I was pissed, but undeterred. I rapidly set up a spike, took some Benadryl from my first aid kit, and settled in for what would turn out to be one of the longest nights of my life. I don't remember what time it started, shortly after dark maybe. I was lying under my tarp, feeling sorry for myself, but still determined to see my trip through. The spot I ended up in was a saddle, something I would usually avoid due to high winds. Designated wilderness on one side and an Indian reservation on the other, approximately 7 miles from any road. I started hearing voices drifting up with the wind from the reservation side. This was odd to me, as this was a very remote location, and that summer I had only encountered 2 other hikers, although truth be told I had never ventured onto the reservation. I discovered evidence of past illegal pot grows in the area, farther down the slope on the wilderness side. Black plastic tubing and trash. Nothing that I thought was active. Anyway, when the voices started, I could tell they weren't speaking English, and it sounded like maybe they were partying. Then I heard it. A blood-curdling scream. It was so loud and lasted so long that I thought a woman was being murdered or tortured. And I was immediately on edge and made sure my radio was working. It was not. I had an extra battery that was also dead, even though I had grabbed them both off the charger that morning and had not turned my radio on. Shit. The voices and screams continued. I couldn't believe my ears. I consider myself a skilled woodsman with decent experience, as well as prior military service. I guess I was trying to rationalize what I was hearing, and thought perhaps there was some kind of ceremony taking place on the reservation. Something outside my culture that I didn't understand. The next scream I heard didn't come from the reservation, though. It came from directly below me on the wilderness side. I felt extremely uneasy and was surrounded at this point. I had an overwhelming urge to leave, but decided to stick it out due to my still limited vision. It was a windy night and several fire-killed conifer snags came down in close proximity to my makeshift camp. I didn't think this was odd at the time, as I was focused on the vocalizations, and the overhead hazard was the primary reason I would normally not camp in that saddle. Voices and screams continued throughout the night, sometimes getting louder, sometimes fading off. I felt like they were covering incredible distances given the terrain. I did not sleep. I was clutching a hand tool. I could not believe what was happening. The next morning at first light, I packed up my gear and left. Needless to say, folks back at the station were surprised to see me. I was in rough shape and told my supervisor that I needed to report a potential rape or other violent crime that might have occurred the night before. I relayed my story, but was feeling less and less confident in what I had heard the night before. I was exhausted. I wanted to sleep. After chatting with the district wildlife biologist, he played a series of cougar mating calls for me in an attempt to identify what I had heard. Part of my story was that I didn't think the sounds were human. People were looking at me sideways at this point, and I took the opportunity to identify the sounds I heard as similar to the ones he played. However, that is not what I heard on the mountain that night. Thanks for all you do. I wish you remain anonymous. All right, man, you got it. Thanks for that. Email, share, and you know by now, you've already been looking into it. You know what you heard, right? You heard exactly what tens of thousands of other people have heard in the woods. You heard it. There's no denying it. It's not going to go away. It's probably etched in your brain like a frickin' tattoo, right? And again, there's another classic, typical reaction is not really telling your superiors what really went down, right? Fear of ridicule or termination, probably. It's unfortunate. I'll tell you what, everybody's becoming much more brave this year, aren't they? The amount of people coming forward is staggering. But how can't you? With all the insanity going on in mainstream today, absolute insanity, how can you not just come out and blatantly talk about what you've seen or what you heard? It's nothing compared to the horse shit and circus going on today, I'll guarantee you that. Anyway, what else do we got? Red eyes in the woods. Steve, it seems that you're right that there may be some connection between weird paranormal experiences and the Sasquatch or Bigfoot. This story happened when I was in college and it was witnessed by 5 of my friends also. You know how you hang around with a group of people at university that become like your study friends and party friends? There were 6 of us all together, myself and my girlfriend, a girl named Lynn and her townie boyfriend. A townie is someone who does not go in the university or college but lives in the town. There were 2 people, Mary and Mike, who were not dating but were also friends with the group. One lazy Saturday afternoon, we were hanging around together on the first floor of the girls' dorm. We ordered pizza, and I was relaxing in the chair reading something when my girlfriend and Mary came running up and said they had a wonderful idea of something to try. They're going to make a Ouija board. I told them they should not do this, and that I did not think it was safe, and that they could have something happen bad to them. They promised they would not do it. You know that when girls promise things, it's not for sure. I went on to bed in my dorm room I was sleeping at 2 in the morning, and I got the screaming call in the intercom to frantic girls with blood on their faces and arms and from scratches. They made a Ouija board with the cardboard and used the glass as a pointer. The glass started to move under the fingertips, and then they got scared and tried to let their hands off of it when the glass started to spin around on its own on the cardboard and then flew against the wall and broke into a lot of pieces. This is where they received the cuts. It was lucky that nothing hit anyone's eyes. The next week was kind of crazy, where the people that were involved, which was my girlfriend Carolyn, Mike, who had snuck into the girls' dorm, and Mary, all 3 of these people were having nightmares and very much on edge. That following Saturday was Mike's birthday, and Lynn said, let's take Mike up the mountains, so we'll give him a birthday party. Well, I piled into my car. On the top of Holston Mountain is Holston Lake, and this is where we drove to late in the evening Saturday night. I parked my car on the rock beach, and everyone got out, and we started to gather firewood from the nearby woods and driftwood from along the beach. We got a nice little bonfire going, and we cracked open some beers and started to enjoy ourselves. Right at that moment, we started to hear steps in the wood edge right next to us. It was not very far away, and it certainly looked like you would hear and see someone walking right there. It sounded like someone walking on 2 feet, not like a dog or a wolf walking on 4. One step, then another step, then another step, like this. Mike and I had flashlights and we swung them around facing directly at the source of the sound. Directly in the flashlight beam, there was 2 glowing red eyes looking right back at us. You couldn't see much of the face and only a little bit of the shoulder, which did look like it was covered with some dark hair. Within 1 second, it had turned and twisted out of our light. We scanned around with the flashlights, could not find it again. It was very strange because it was very close to us, and only 1 layer of trees between us and it, so it was not easy for anything to disappear like that. Try as we might, we could not find it again, and there was no more sound after we hit it with the flashlight. We went back to the fire and tried to relax, and the noise started again. Someone walking just inside the very first layer of trees, stepping slowly and making noise in the leaves. We swung the flashlights around, but this time we could not pinpoint it. The noise stopped. We went back and tried to enjoy ourselves, cracking open a new round of beers, and then stepping sound started again. The girls at this point were starting to get panicked and hysterical. I didn't know what I was dealing with, but I thought that it might have been a wolf. But where I saw the eyes would have been too tall for a wolf standing on the ground. I know it sounds fantastic, but I actually had just finished making a fantasy movie as a school project, and the back of my trunk was all the props. There was a 36-inch long broadsword that I had constructed with a knife maker that I had made friends with at the university. I told everyone that I would go get this, and in case it was something bad, I'd be able to cut it in half. Lynn said that we should at least cut the cake, and then we could go, so let's quickly cut the cake for Mike. We brought the cake out, opened up the cover, and just started to cut the cake when from the area of the woods where the eyes were seen, this incredibly loud scream growl came. It was so loud that it bounced off the mountains in the distance and came back as an echo. It is the type of scream growl that makes you scared inside, even if you're a brave person. Everyone ran to the car. I was the closest to the sound with the sword in the sheath in one hand and a beer in the other. I ran too. For 2 steps, jumping over the fire. I realized that it would be on my back. I summoned my bravery and drew the sword and spun around to meet the attack. It was not there. As I stood there in the darkness with the firelight glistening off the sword, the girls were having a nuclear meltdown next to the car because I had the keys in my pocket and they were telling me that I was going to die here. They were screaming at me to come back. I never do this, but I did not pick up everything that we had on the beach. I kicked some rocks and sand over the top of the fire and reached down to pick up my scabbard. Keeping an eye on the wood's edge where the sound was heard from, I slowly backed up to the car. As we drove back to university, no one spoke any words. I'm sorry to say that this whole event and all the events connected with the Ouija board drove Mike over the edge. He was saying some weird things to me when I met him in the student union about 2 weeks after the incident. Shortly after that, he was institutionalized in an insane asylum. I don't know any more information on how he fared after that. Thank you for your channel. That's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. I don't know if if I had to be asked what I thought, not that my opinion means shit, but I don't think there's a connection with these beings and those boards. And I do have experience with one of those damn boards when I was about 19 years old. I was at some friends in another small town on Vancouver Island, and somebody pulled out one of those things. There's a board about that big, brown, with all the letters on it. And there was a plastic thing on 3 legs or something. And everybody would put their fingers on it gently. I think 3 people. And they got me to do it. And I wasn't feeling too cool about it. And these girls started asking this thing questions. And they would go to yes or no. And, you know, are you here? Or somebody here? And go, yes. And I'm like, and I wasn't moving that thing. But I couldn't guarantee that the girls weren't moving that plastic thing. But it was definitely starting to rip around that board, right? And then I asked it. They said, go ahead and ask some questions. I went, all right. And nobody knew any of my family members' names, or any. I have some Norwegian descent names that aren't your typical names. And I asked that board, first asked how many sisters I had. went to the correct number on the board, and nobody knew in that room, and I'm like, uh-oh. And then I got it to spell, I asked it to spell a name, and it was a Norwegian name, and it spelt it. And I went, I'm out. I wouldn't want anything to do with that world. I'm out. Leave it alone. And I'm not into it. I'm just not into that shit. Still aren't today. I'm not into it. I don't want nothing to do with it. But, so that's my experience with those boards. I think it might have, I think it's possibly a coincidence that you guys had that Ouija board experience, and then later on in the woods you had one of those experiences. I think I'd probably just chalk that up as bad luck twice in a row. Myself. This river's still flooding. I got on Google Earth the other day, or on the maps last night actually, to see just how much real estate's on this side of the river. And there's that big chunk of timber behind me and swamp and nothing. I'm just trying to get an idea of how much real estate's back there behind me, and how much those bears have for ripping around. Because I still have 3 cameras on the other side of this river. I can't get to them now. So I'm gonna have to get an inflatable and launch it farther up the river and drift down across the river and grab my cameras and then drift back to right here and pull out of the water. But I can't wait to see what's on them. But I'm not sure if I want to pull them yet, because I think these bears here are going to be out for quite a while yet. But I don't know how much shore travel they do right now with this high water. But there's definitely fish in there. But the other big river, there's a river coming here, and there's another one farther back that way that this river dumps into, and that sucker is loaded with fish right now. Spring salmon and coho salmon. But anyway, quick mention on that. It's remember last summer I thought I got a picture of something in the bushes back there and I circled it in red. And right now I am very convinced that I got a picture of something. It's back in the videos on the YouTube channel. Alright. What do we got? Here's another one. Alright, here we go. Titled UFO/Bigfoot. Hi Steve, love watching your show. And the stories you have shared has given me the courage to share my stories. Perfect. I've told some close friends and family members of my encounter starting in August of '66. It was the week of my 8th birthday. My grandparents owned a private beach in Cape St. Mary's, Maryland, on the Patuxent River. Sorry about my pronunciations, they suck sometimes. Patuxent. A family friend, Tony, asked my grandpa if he could use his 18-foot cabin cruiser that my grandpa built. It had a 75 horsepower Johnson on it. He wanted to take me fishing with his friend, John, for my birthday. At my age, I knew the river like the back of my hand. I knew the best fishing and crabbing spots from all the trips on the river my dad. We were about 15 miles from the Chesapeake Bay. That's where we went to catch spot fish. Fished all day, caught 32 fish. Started back up the river around 7 p.m. We anchored the boat a half a mile from our beach next to a navigational buoy, which had a flashing white beacon for large vessels coming up the river to Benedict Power Plant. I could see the lights on at the house and the spotlight that is turned on when we are out at night on the river. Tony and John were drinking all day. While they were in the cabin cleaning the fish and still drinking, I was looking at the spotlight while fishing. It was a clear night. You could see all the stars. All of a sudden, a bright orange light appeared over the house. I knew that my grandparents and a couple of neighbors would be playing cards. They did every night when my grandpa was there. My 2 girl first cousins were also there. They were 7 and 9 years old. While I watched the orange light, it started to lose its bright orange glow to a dark red. Lightning bolts came out of it, and all the lights went out in the house. The spotlight went out, and the neighboring house's lights went out also. At this point, I could make out its shape. As I watched it land in the field next to our property, it wasn't visible anymore. I told Tony and John that a flying saucer landed in the field. They were so drunk they laughed at me, so I went back to fishing. Approximately 30 minutes later, the object started rising above the field, moved over the house, lightning flashed again, and all the lights came back on. At this time, Tony and John either went to sleep or passed out, so I pulled the anchor. Started the boat and headed to shore. When we got to the pier, I tied the boat up and ran upstairs to the house. Up the stairs to the house. I ran in and said, "Did you all see the flying saucer?" They all stared at me like I was crazy. I heard them say how much? I heard them say, "We saw a bunch of red lightning." Then everything went black. They didn't remember for how long. My two cousins both were complaining of head and ear aches. My grandmother was tending to them. Everyone left and went to bed. I was an early riser. I always got up at 6 a.m. to go down to the beach to fish or catch some crabs. My grandma would call down to me when breakfast was ready. But that particular morning, my grandpa was up before me. I went looking for him. I noticed the water hose was stretched out to the field next to our property. My grandpa always burned the field in July each year to keep the bugs and snakes away. I asked him why he was burning the field again. He showed me the big charred circle in the middle of the field. He looked at me and said, "I believe you saw something last night, but you can never tell anyone." He, my dad, and my mom both worked for the government. He said not to talk to any strangers. I said, okay. The following summer, my grandma, two cousins, and I were alone during the weekdays during the summer. Grandpa, Dad, and Mom would come down on weekends. During the summer, during the nights when it was really dark outside, these beings, which I thought were men in gray skin tight suits, would take my two cousins out of the house. I'd always sleep with Grandma, I guess, because I was the only grandson. When one of the gray men tried to take me, she said, "You can't take him." My grandma was a devout Christian woman. She wasn't afraid of anything. She kept me in a tight hug. I thought it was all a dream until they came 2 more times. I do remember being carried to the field. After that, everything was blank. After that summer, my grandpa sold the beach property. I was so devastated. I was so mad at him. Found out 4 years later why he sold it. My grandma told him of the gray man. My cousins and I only spoke of what happened once and swore not to tell anyone. They remembered being carried into the field and then blacked out. That's the end of the story. P.S. Both my cousins died of cancer. No one in our family ever died of cancer. Second story is in '85. My grandparents had a house in Cabin John, Maryland. In the back of the house is all woods which backed up in the Potomac River. As a kid, my friends and I always played and fished in these woods. Now, in order to get to the river, you had to access the C&O Canal. We never had to worry about people bothering us in the late 60s and early 70s. Well, in '85, I decided to camp out for the weekend. So I'm guessing on the river for the weekend. The woods were considered national park. National Park police patrolled the river banks on horseback, so I had no worries. I set up a campsite at a spot in the riverbank where I knew I could wade out a good distance to fish. Caught some nice bluegill, pan-sized bass, 7 fish in my chain stringer. I cleaned 3 fish and had a good meal, had a good fire going. Left the other 4 fish on the stringer attached to a spike I drove into the ground. I went to sleep around 11 p.m. I woke up 5:30 to go fishing. You know, early bird gets the worm type thing. Well, when I came back to check the other fish, they were gone. The spike was there, but the stringer was gone. I looked around and found the stringer hanging on the front support of the tent. Thought one of my friends was playing a joke on me because I told them where I would be if they wanted to come by. Well, I grabbed the stringer, got my fishing pole, and a little box of lures strapped onto my waist. I waded out about 50 yards. The water was waist high in a couple of areas. I got to a spot that was knee deep. Caught two 2-pound bass. One 18-inch catfish, 3 bluegill. Started heading back to the bank. Got about 10 feet from the bank when the fish splashing like crazy. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, this creature, which I estimate to be around 8 to 9 feet tall, dark brown reddish hair all over its body. Arms were very muscular. Chest was at least 5 feet wide. Had like an ultimate bodybuilder's body. Wishing I could look like that, it didn't make a sound. I can tell it was looking at the fish. Not much ever spooked me since my childhood encounter. I wasn't afraid. It didn't seem threatening. I raised the stringer of fish out of the water, and its facial expression was like that of a child getting a toy. Then it hit me. That's where my other fish I caught yesterday went. I took the fish off the stringer one by one, starting with the catfish first. Threw up on the bank next to his enormous feet. He grabbed it. Waited for the others. I gave him all the fish. Yes, it was obvious it was a he. He had the biggest member I'd ever seen. A humorous note. I didn't think there's a woman in the world that would be able to handle him. I took the fish. He took the fish and left me alone. It was amazing how fast he was gone. The wind was blowing from behind me. I hadn't noticed the smell until I got up the bank where he was standing. I'll never forget that smell. It smelled like it should be by the river on a hot day. The footprints it left were big. If I put both my feet together without shoes, that's how wide they were. My feet are 13 inches long. I estimate his were 20 inches using my foot as a guide. I packed up my campsite, left and went home. I told my mother, who was living with me at the time. She told me she saw what she thought was a large monkey, the same color I described back in '45 when she was 16, while she was walking on the C&O Canal towpath around Loch 9 or 10, which is where I was camping. A whoop in the woods towards the river. She followed the sound and saw what she thought was a 5-foot monkey about 10 feet up a tree looking at her. She said it whooped at her 2 or 3 times, then climbed down the tree in one motion and walked off towards the river. I hope these stories will help others come forward without fear. I was afraid for so long, thinking men in black were going to show up and take me away. But since watching your show, knowing millions of people know these beings exist, gives me some comfort. I didn't give more detailed description of the Bigfoot because all the stories you have told of people's descriptions are so alike. All I can say, I know what a happy one looks like. Thank you for all you do. Hope I will see you read my story on your show. Thanks. Best regards, Mike. That's a handful, Mike. Holy shit. You know what? I would imagine there's probably a handful of people out there groaning with the UFO mention. But today, the governments, for some unknown reason, are coming forward with their knowledge of UFOs, their existence, fact that they are real. And you know as well as I do, if they are doing that, it's only because there's some pressure on them from somewhere else that we can't see. That's the only reason various governments in the world today are acknowledging UFOs' factual existence today. It's not because they give a shit about us. It's because they are feeling pressure somewhere that's pressuring them to acknowledge it publicly. And that's where my brain goes, why? Why? What's going on, right? What's going on? Anyway, Mike, thanks for that share. Those are some incredible experiences. And that's also possibly an email that your typical member of the Bigfoot Sasquatch community is going to shuffle under the carpet and under the mat because they don't want to talk about that shit, right? Well, we talk about that shit here, okay? But anyway, I gotta get going. I got a big day ahead of me. I gotta get stuff done. I gotta go remote in a few days and hopefully help someone harvest their Roosevelt elk draw tag back to the ground with some friends. That'll be exciting and fun. I'm gonna film it. And soon, as soon as I get caught up and hunting season's over, I'm gonna be hammering on these rivers, steelhead fishing and filming and showing you guys lots of stuff. So, I have a feeling that this segment on YouTube is going to knee-jerk a handful of people to mend that friendship that they've lost because of a shared experience. I'm pretty sure it's going to happen all because of our first emailer today from the UK. Thank you so much for sending that email, and I can guarantee you that email is going to help someone mend a relationship that was lost because of the experience they had that they didn't ask for when they joined the Club of No Return, right? So that's all I got right now. That's not all I got, but that's all the time I got right now. I gotta get home, take advantage of the daylight. The days are shorter. You gotta get shit done. I'll be back.